All right, welcome back. Have you ever wondered what's actually happening inside your brain during one of those profound mystical experiences? Today, we're going to dig into that. We're going to decode a really powerful spiritual event, but we'll be looking at it from two angles: ancient mysticism and modern science. It's this incredible meeting point of biology and belief. So let's start with a really powerful idea.
So, the source material for this explainer kicks things off with this quote, and man, it's intense. Forget any idea of gentle, floating on clouds. This is telling us that a real spiritual awakening is a full-on, high-voltage, whole-body experience. It's not just, a shift in how you see things. It's a fundamental rewiring of your entire nervous system. And here's the kicker. That's not a metaphor. That's literal biology.
Okay, so how do we get from a quote like that to actual hard science? Well, we need a case study, a real-world example. So we're going to ground this whole discussion in a very specific, really well-documented experience that happened back in India in 1971. This is going to be our roadmap for understanding the neurology of transcendence.
So let's picture this. We're in a small, crowded room in India. There are about 20 people there. And their teacher, a guy known as Maharajji, he's up on the roof above them. And then this happens. The teacher touches one person's forehead. Now, this technique has a name. It's called a Shaktipat. And in ancient traditions, it's seen as a direct transmission of spiritual energy. And for this one person, the result was, bam, an immediate, profound, and totally life-altering shift in consciousness. It's like a dormant fire inside him was just lit. So what did that jolt from the divine actually feel like? Well, the experience for him broke down into three distinct, really powerful things: seeing an inner light, hearing an inner sound, and tasting a kind of mysterious nectar. And what's so fascinating is that each of these has a specific name in ancient yogic texts and, as we're about to see, a pretty clear explanation in modern neuroscience. Okay, first up was the light. The person described seeing this vivid golden circle with a brilliant blue star right in the center. And this wasn't just some random hallucination. No way. It's actually a classic experience you read about in ancient texts, where it's called Jyoti Darshan. And that basically translates to the vision of inner light, or even the direct perception of your own self as light. So, what in the world is happening in the brain at this point? Well, this is where it gets really, really cool. The source material suggests this vision lines up perfectly with the activation of the pineal gland, that tiny gland in the geometric center of the brain. It's like a light switch just got flipped on. At the same time, the brainwaves shift dramatically, going from our normal beta state all the way up to these mystical gamma waves. And that blue ray he saw, the source even connects it to a specific frequency, 741 hertz, which some traditions associate with the throat chakra. And I mean, just look at the scale of the shift. It's absolutely staggering. Over on the left, you've got beta waves. That's our normal, day-to-day problem-solving consciousness. But then, on the right, you see the gamma waves, spiking to more than 3 times that frequency. This is not a subtle change, folks. This is a full-blown electrical revolution happening inside the brain, a state that scientists directly link to profound insight and mystical experiences. All right, so after the light came the sound. The initiate was then taught a special technique to basically hear the inner symphony of existence. This is a practice that yogis call Nada Yoga, which means the path of union through sound. And he learned to hear everything, from a roar like a giant waterfall all the way down to the subtle buzz of a bee. He was essentially tuning into the universe's own background frequency. So how is the brain even doing this? How is it tuning the cosmic radio? Well, it starts in the auditory cortex, the brain's sound processing center. But it's so much more than that. The process actually stimulates the vagus nerve, which is kind of like the highway to heaven in our body. And that sends calming signals everywhere. This, in turn, produces these nice, relaxing alpha brainwaves, which quiet the mental chatter just enough so you can finally perceive what's always been there, just humming away beneath all the noise. And that brings us to the third and maybe the most mysterious part of the whole experience: tasting what's called soma. The person described it as living waters, or a kind of divine nectar appearing in his mouth. Now, in ancient traditions, this is a huge deal. It's known as amrita, or soma, the nectar of the gods. And they say that even a single drop can instantly and completely shift your consciousness. But get this. This isn't just poetry or a metaphor. This mystical nectar can actually be broken down into a powerful cocktail of neurochemicals, all produced by the body's own sacred pharmacy. So those waves of love and connection, that's oxytocin. The pure, unadulterated bliss, that's anandamide, which actually comes from the Sanskrit word for bliss. That profound calm and stillness, GABA. And that natural euphoria, you guessed it, endorphins. Your body is literally brewing its own elixir of enlightenment.
So we've looked at the individual pieces, right? The light, the sound, the nectar. But what does it look like when all of these systems fire in concert? Let's zoom out and get the complete neurological picture of a brain on bliss.
So, scientists who study these transcendent states have actually pinpointed several key markers. For one, the brain drops into a theta state, which is linked to deep meditation and big insights. We also see this thing called gamma wave synchronization, where completely different parts of the brain start talking to each other in perfect harmony. And this one is huge. The default mode network, which is the part of the brain responsible for our ego, our sense of me, it just goes quiet. And finally, you get this increased brain coherence, where the logical front part of your brain links up with the emotional limbic system. The whole brain literally starts working as one unified whole.
And you have to remember, this experience isn't just happening in the mind. It's a powerful, full-body event. That spiritual jolt is rewiring the entire system. And that starts with the body's internal pharmacy, the glands that produce all our hormones.
You can think of it like an entire endocrine orchestra suddenly starting to play. The concert begins with the pineal gland, our light switch, which releases melatonin and maybe even DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. That's the signal for the pituitary gland, the master conductor, to kick off a whole hormonal cascade. Then the thyroid gland chimes in, regulating the body's energy and metabolism. And finally, the adrenal glands jump in to help manage the body's response to this powerful, spiritual kind of stress. So when the initiate said he felt hooked up to a power plant, yeah, he was physiologically spot on.
But what about that physical shaking he described? The source material explains this really well. That shaking isn't a sign that something's gone wrong. It's the opposite. That's the nervous system literally recalibrating itself to handle frequencies it just wasn't designed for in ordinary consciousness. It's a process called neurogenic tremoring. It's the body's natural, healthy way of discharging immense amounts of energy and integrating this huge cosmic download. Okay, to bring this all down to earth and make it a bit more tangible, the source material offers a really simple practice you can try safely at home. Just gaze into a candle frame, and while you're doing that, start humming. Pay attention. Notice any sensations that might pop up on your tongue. It's a very simple way to start playing with and integrating these three principles, light, sound, and nectar, for yourself. All right, this brings us to what might be the most crucial point of this whole explainer. What if this profound, absolutely life-altering experience didn't actually add anything new to the person who had it? This quote really gets to the heart of it. The core argument here is that these capacities for transcendence, for bliss, they're our birthright. We are born with brains that are literally hardwired for these states, but our society, our culture, it kind of programs us to forget that. The metaphor here is just so powerful. It's like being born with wings, but then spending your entire life learning how to crawl on your belly. So, how do we remember how to fly? Well, it comes down to practice. This is neuroplasticity on steroids. Every single time you meditate or do a similar practice, you are literally rewiring and strengthening the neural pathways that lead to these extraordinary states. It's just like exercising a muscle. A meditating brain is a brain that is actively remembering what it was always designed to do. And that really brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. What if enlightenment isn't about becoming something new? What if it's not about striving to become some enlightened person who's separate from who you are right now? What if the entire journey is simply a process of remembering the magnificent, transcendent nature that was already there inside you all along? It's a question that completely reframes the spiritual quest, not as a search for something you're missing, but as a homecoming to what you already are.